Yeah? I'm not going to hop on that. You know that, eh? Because he's going to come out here and immediately say, and who's playing today and who played last night for third and fourth. Are you folks leaving or joining us? You going? All right, then. We'll wait for you to have a seat. Good afternoon, everyone. How are you? Are you enjoying the show? How many of you have had so much to eat out there that you are just so glad to be sitting here now and going, oh, just a couple. How many of you still have to go out and do a lot of tasting? Come on in, folks. Come on through. We'll wait for you to seat. Right, now, very quickly. Oh, my God, she's back. It's his biggest groupie. She's been to every show. We had to chase her out of his hotel last night. Welcome back. Ladies and gentlemen, without much further ado, let's not take too much. Come on through, folks. I'm the actual winner of Australia MasterChef. You thought I was young and good looking. Just goes to show how old the bloody series is. Right, who's here to see actual cooking? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of you. Who's here to see him? Without much further ado, please welcome the winner of MasterChef Australia, Brent Owens.
Welcome.
How are you, mate?
Welcome.
You good?
How are you, man? Good?
Good. Now listen, I'm shaking your hand for the simple reason that any team that can at least in the last year have beaten New Zealand has got my vote for today's game.
Oh, I forgot. There's a rugby game on tonight.
Yeah, a little bit of
isn't
a
there?
rugby game going on.
Are you all watching it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Is South Africa in it? Yeah. I'm not going to make it out here alive, am I? No, that's good. Is everybody going to go over and watch it after this? So we might have to cut this one a little bit short so that we don't miss the start of it. No? Well, that depends on you. So how long this goes for will depend on how interactive you guys are. So I've had a couple of demos so far. One was 45 minutes.
The other one could have been 2 hours. We could have gone on and on.
Depends on your questions.
Well, listen, there are only 5 people. We actually don't have to cook.
No, we're not cooking today.
No. We just
What are we
want
doing?
to talk about you.
Oh, cool.
Because there's only 4 people here to watch the cooking, and the others here to see you.
What do you want me to do?
No, but listen, before we go on, I've got to thank our key sponsors. You're having a great time at the Oyster Box.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is where we're being accommodated. You all should have on your chairs got a Robertson Spice bottle, did you? No? I will give a couple of those away just now. I'll get some more stock of that. And, of course, you're cooking on these great Defy appliances, the gas stoves and things. So that makes it great.
And the produce,
and
of course.
I think
got products, beautiful products.
Listen, dude, you cannot beat South African products. And you cannot beat South African products that's basically on every corner in South Africa.
I've noticed.
I don't know if you've got them over there.
Well, we've got similar in Australia. We've got fruit and veg markets. So it'll be all of the stuff on the corners will be put into one store.
We've got everyone's family corner market.
Well, it's more convenient to be on every corner.
Now, Spa is not like the spa you visited this morning after your dinner last night.
And then the sauna and then the massage.
The spa is kind of, we've got an Afrikaans word for save. But it's not really save in cheap stuff, but it's save because they buy well and they bring you the best prices locally. So
that's what you want.
That's what Spa's all about.
That's what you need. If you can
so let's hear it for our sponsors. Let's hear it for Brent. Over to you, my mate.
Thank you. Well, firstly, thank you for turning up. You always get a little bit nervous when there's a demo that you might come out and you've got one of your friends sitting in the crowd and that's it. So that's a thumbs up to start. And then number 2, I gather that a few of you watched MasterChef last year. Yeah? Hands up. How many? Oh, shit. Well, then there's no excuses. Everybody should have questions to ask. I'm sure there's loads that you want to know about what happens behind the scenes, the nitty-gritties, the secrets, how it really is. Are we all friends? Are we all enemies? So that's up to you. The more questions, the better. Fire away. I want as many questions as possible. We've usually got a book to give away. We've got a book to give away? Yeah, we'll just say yeah. We've got a book to give away for whoever asks the most questions. And the dish that I'm cooking We'll have about 15 or 20 little individual portions, so a lot of you can come up and taste as well, which is really cool. So the reason why I've chosen this dish is because it's one that I cooked on MasterChef. For those who watched, which was pretty much everybody here, you may remember the top 3. I did a dish to get into the finale, and it was pork belly and apples. Yeah? A few nods? Yeah? That's the dish I'm doing today. The reason why I've chosen this dish is because it's probably my favourite. I loved it. It was a really fun cook. It got me to the finale. And for most people, if you were served this dish at a restaurant, you would probably never even think to put the combinations together, and it would be impossible to make. But it's really, really simple. I want to show you all the elements and how easy it is to put together, why I put flavours with which flavours, how I get creative with making new dishes. So let's get to it. First things first, pork belly, of course, takes a couple of hours to roast, and it's a cheaper cut, as we know, very affordable for most families. It's got fat through it. You want to render that down. You want it to be nice and juicy. But what's the most important part about roast pork? Crackling, exactly. Now, has anybody got their own secrets to the perfect crackling? Yeah, there's a few. You got one? Oh, Mr. Cafe Man, is it? No? Everybody's got their own way. And to be honest, a lot of the ones I've tried do work. So don't think that my method's better than any other method. If your method works, then just use it. The way I do it, I always bring the pork belly out first. I always salt it first. Does anybody know why we salt? To draw out the moisture. So you put the score in the skin, through the skin, and then you salt it, so the salt will draw out the moisture. Moisture is what will prevent pork skin from becoming crispy. So I want to salt the skin, and you want to get it just in between the cracks. You don't want to penetrate the flesh too much because it'll start to cure it. You just want to cut through the skin and the top layer of fat, top layer of fat, and then you want to leave that, if possible. If you've got an hour, leave it for an hour. If you've got 4 hours, leave it for 4 hours. I'll put that aside, and then you want to start with your base. Now the jus for this dish is all the pan juices that we reduce right down. So it's important to try and pack as much flavour into this as possible. So a lot of people will roast with a roasting tray so that it's elevated. The idea of this is to use the ingredients to act as the roasting tray. So that way you're cooking with the pork elevated, but you're also adding a lot more flavour into the dish with the ingredients you're putting there. So I will add when I get a knife, there we go. I've got an apple. Obviously, it's based around pork and apples, so we want lots of apple in there. We want onion, because onion's another important component in this dish. Couple of apples, couple of onions, and that's the bed for our pork belly. So put that down. We've got a couple of cloves of garlic. Just give them a light bash. Again, you're not going to use any of these ingredients in the dish. You just want to extract all the flavour out of them for the sauce. So put that in. You've got your pork belly that's salted. We'll sit that on the top. Again, quick question. Does anybody know why I sit the pork belly on the top as opposed to on the bottom with everything around it? Moisture, exactly, moisture. So if I was to sit this flat and then fill it up to there with stock or liquid, you've got a big chance of it bubbling, and bubbles will cause moisture to splatter onto the top of the skin, which will stop the crackle, exactly. So I've got that in. We want to add our flavours. I've got apple juice that I'm adding to this, so it's very, very sweet. That'll be nice and delicious as it reduces down. Apple juice can go in. We have some beef stock. So this is a couple of cups of apple juice, a couple of cups of beef stock. We've got some Guinness. Do we know what Guinness is? Yeah? I think it's the equivalent here would be milk stout. Yeah? Which is some lethal stuff I've found out. Many of times. So I've got about a cup and a half of the Guinness. And then we have the Aussie secret ingredient, this stuff. Does anybody know what this stuff is? Vegemite, exactly. Do we know what Vegemite is? it's like Marmite. It's essentially like Marmite. This is a little bit yeasty, got a bit more yeasty, but essentially, if you can't get hold of Vegemite, use the Marmite. I just want to add about a teaspoon of this. Now you have to be really careful with adding these sort of flavors because it can overpower the dish really easily. I don't want the Vegemite to be the flavor through it. You want the seasoning of it. It's nice and salty. It gives that rich umami flavor that you get from like fish sauce and hard caramelized flavors. So that's going to reduce down and be our jus. It's going to be really rich. It's going to be really salty, really strong, and really powerful. So you'll only need a teaspoon, a tablespoon for the whole dish. So that's our base. We'll just move that aside. That's the base of the dish. I'll put this into the oven about 170 for a couple of hours, and then I'll bang the heat up to full whack, or I'll turn the grill on just to get that skin nice and crispy. So over that 2 hours, you'll be slowly drawing out the moisture, rendering the fat, the skin will get nice and dry, and then when you pump it full of heat at the end, you get those bubbles and you get the nice crackly texture. So that can go in. Any quick MasterChef questions while we're going to the next part of the dish? Anyone dying to ask one? We've got one over the back here. Have we got a microphone? No, you might have to yell. Can we get a microphone, please? Yeah. I'll hold that thought. I'll come back to you with a microphone. All right, so with this dish also, we've got our pork, we've got our jus. We want something creamy to bring it all together. So we've got a little parsnip puree. On the challenge and in the book, I've got a celeriac puree. We just didn't have that here, so we're using parsnip. My basic method for almost all basic purees is this. I add a little bit of butter to a pot. I saute off some onion and some garlic for about 6 minutes. Once that's soft, I'll grate my vegetable into the pot. I'll add a little bit of vegetable stock just to wet it, so about half a cup. I'll put a lid on it, and then I'll cook that for about 12 minutes. As soon as that's cooked, take the lid off, puree it, a little bit of milk, salt and pepper, and that's my basic puree. The reason why we have the lid on, if you take it off, we have steam. Steam is evaporated liquid, and if you evaporate the liquid, you'll be having to add more, and the more liquid you add, the more flavour of the ingredient will be released, and it'll end up just tasting like a bowl of vegetable stock. So that's my little trick to making making puree, and that's our one there. So think about now, when I'm creating a dish, what have we got? We've got pork belly, which is rich. We've got our stock, which is really rich, really salty, really powerful. We've got a creamy puree, which is, again, really heavy. So if I'm creating something, I'm thinking this is going to be a really heavy dish, and after 2 mouthfuls, I'm going to feel sick. So I need something to cut through it. I need something to balance it all out. Anybody know what I'll be adding to this now? What sort of element?
2, wouldn't it? Robertson.
Side of vinegar.
Herbs.
So sour, exactly, sour. Vinegar's sour. So we need some acid to cut through all of that dish. And we've got 2 acidic elements in this dish. Yeah, go for it on the corner.
On the corner? Was it you? This corner here.
No, you just answered that last question. Yeah, you can have it.
Well, there we go then.
Yeah. So we've got 2 acidic elements in this dish. We've got an apple pickle, and we've got an apple cider vinegar gel. That sounds fancy, doesn't it? So you see these little cubes here? Little cubes. That is 2 ingredients plus agar. That's apple cider vinegar and apple juice. That's all it is. The reason why we're not doing straight apple cider vinegar, because it'll be a bit too sharp and a bit too powerful. So we're just cutting it with a bit of sweetness from the apple juice. To make this, we do 100 mils apple cider vinegar, 100 mils apple juice. We want to bring that up to the boil. And we're going to add a powder called agar-agar. Has anybody used this before? Seen it before? Yeah? Do we know what a jelly is and what's it usually made from? Gelatin. We've all heard of gelatin. Does anybody know why I'm not using gelatin in this dish and I'm using agar-agar powder? That can be a prize-winning question,
yeah,
actually.
That'll be a prize-winning.
We've got one
What's
up the
your
back
answer,
on the
ma'am?
left.
Sorry?
There's two reasons.
Because of what? Because it's going with vinegar, so it's not going to break it down. Yeah, but it's not the real reason with this
The
one.
acid, because the acid will retard the gelatin.
ma'am?
That's one. Yep.
One is a vegetable and one is a meat pork thing.
Yeah, it's a vegetarian issue. No, no, blonde
Well,
answer.
it is agar
Who else?
is a vegetarian option.
Yes.
So if you want to make a vegetarian dish and you want a jelly in it, use agar powder.
Sorry,
That's
Dave.
correct. Also, gelatin acid retards gelatin,
Sets quicker.
so that will
Nah.
set. And the main reason is because
Hold on.
You've got one.
We're going to get there. We've got sets quicker. We could possibly get the right answer. Is this going to be the right answer?
So it won't melt with the heat.
Perfect.
That wins you the
perfect.
prize. There we go.
Gelatin melts at room temperature. So if we want to create a dish that can have a jelly on it and be eaten as a main course that's warm, you need something that can withstand the heat. So agar powder won't melt at room temperature. It can withstand heat. So if we were using gelatin in this, you would serve it and it would just dissolve back into a liquid and it would be a complete waste of time. So we're using agar powder. Great stuff. This one 1 teaspoon, 100 mils of apple, 100 mils of vinegar. That's a very firm set, but I want it to be firm because I want it to be a defined cube so that when you bite into it, you know what it is. If it's like set like a panna cotta, it's going to defeat the purpose because it'll just dissolve before it even hits your lips. So bring that up to the boil. I want to add a teaspoon of this in, but it's very important with agar to actually whisk it in and let it dissolve for a couple of minutes. If you don't boil it, it won't dissolve and essentially your jelly won't set. So bring that up to temperature. Go in with the agar. Give it a quick whisk. And you'll see once this is dissolved and I pour it out into a bowl, it'll already start setting almost automatically. So you'll be able to see how quick it sets. So I'll give that a whisk just so it doesn't get clumpy, however you want to say it. And then I'll let that do its thing. And also I said we're having an apple pickle. Do we all know what a pickle is and how to pickle things? Yeah, a few nods, a few shakes, a bit of both. Well, pickle, my ratio to a pickle, it adds acid, it preserves things. So when you buy a burger, a Macca's cheeseburger, and you've got that little pickle on the top, that's what we're doing here, but with an apple. You can pickle anything. I always have a pickled broccoli stem in my fridge, so I use the florets in all my cooking, and then I'll use the stem as a big pickle, and that can be my snack during the week. Just it saves on wastage, and it actually is really delicious. So whisk that. My pickling liquid varies depending on the dish. If you want to have a fail-proof one standard recipe for a pickling liquid, very simple, do 1 part vinegar. Now you can do whatever vinegar you choose. 1 part water, 1 part sugar. That's the basic method. If you want it to be a bit stronger, how I often have it, I'll do vinegar and sugar, and that's it. If I want it to be a bit sweeter, I'll add a bit more sugar. If I want it to be a bit more sour, I'll add less sugar. So it just depends what you want. But the basic method, 1 part sugar, 1 part water, 1 part vinegar. Very, very easy. I'll just pour this gel out now. Is that for this bowl? Yeah? So you can see here, you can see that it's completely changed already, and it's already starting to thicken up. So I'll set that aside, and it'll probably be set before we even finish. And I'll get onto my pickle. Very, very easy. Obviously, there's sugar in this, so you want that to dissolve. You want the sweetness to go into the dish, so you want to add the sugar. So go in with the vinegar, in with the sugar. Let that dissolve. As soon as it's dissolved, all you do is you pour that mixture into a bowl with your apple, put it in the fridge and just leave it overnight, and that's pickled. So you can put that in a jar. You can do that with anything, and it lasts forever in your fridge. So that's a good tip. If you ever get to the end of the week and you've got a load of leftover veggies and you would usually just throw them out, pickle all of them and put them in a jar. It's great. Add different flavors, add different berries, add different whole spices, add different herbs, and then you have different condiments with each dish. So it's a really, really handy thing to know how to do. So I'm just going to cube these up. Now, thinking about presentation, obviously it was something that I was pretty good at on the show. My little secret to presentation is thinking ahead. I think that it happens all the time, even at home when I'm not thinking, I've had a busy day, I'm trying to construct a dish, and you just start chopping away. If I just start chopping this apple, however I chop it, how am I going to present it? You've got to think ahead. What am I going to do? How am I going to eat this dish? How am I going to plate this dish up? What flavours do we have? What textures do we have? We've got little cubes of a pickle, of a gel. So you want similar size or similar shape for the apple pickle, so that when you have a mouthful, you've got the pork belly, you've got the puree, you've got the gel, you've got the pickle, you've got everything in one mouthful. Otherwise, what's the point of this dish? It won't balance. This dish is all about getting the balance right, and to do that, it's not just the flavours, it's about the construction also. So I want to cut these apples up into similar sizes to the pickle, just little cubes. And I mean, the same goes if you wanted to do it the other end of the scale, where you've got everything big, but then you have to chop it all up. So it's a bit of a pain. So I'll give that a shake. Just let the sugar dissolve. Then I'll just put the apple into the bowl, pour that on, and it's done. I did a dish recently with the cauliflower pickle on, and it looks the same, it just feels like it's been boiled, but then people would bite into it and you get that hit of acidity, and people were like, whoa, that's unexpected, that's really cool. And it's just something pickled. You can do it way ahead of time, great for parties, great for Christmases, that sort of thing, and very easy to do. So that's our finished gel. I can take this off now. So I'm just going to simply pour that over. Let that sit aside overnight, and it's done. 24 hours has passed, and we've got our ready-made pickle for plating. All right, now we've got a mic. We can do a couple of Q questions, yeah? Yeah?
Okay, dokes. Some Q&A around MasterChef. Now, probably we got a super fan or a stalker sitting over
no,
here.
little Cole. Is that Cole?
Yeah.
I met Cole before. He's a little legend.
Have you really? When did you meet him?
Just now.
Oh, just now. Okay. Do you have a question for him about MasterChef that you're dying to ask? No. Okay, Mom's got a question. Yes, Mom?
He wants to know if Laura and Brent are still friends.
Are you and Laura still friends?
We are still friends. I think the number one question I get asked is, was I having a little affair with Laura? But I can shut that down now. No, nothing happened. It was like brother and sister. We clicked from the top 50. We spent a lot of time together early on in the competition. And I don't know, I just sort of had that brotherly role almost. And yeah, we'll tie it from the start, and we still are now. So it's
so much
cool.
so that he brought Laura out with him. She's sitting in the back. No, I'm only joking.
No, she's working hard. She's working
Right,
at
here we
a
go.
top restaurant in Adelaide. All right.
Now,
Well,
please remember, the question is not, will you marry me? What would you like to know?
When you cook at home, do you always do it artistically? Like,
When you cook at home,
Yeah.
do you also, just for your own personal satisfaction, make it look that good on the plate?
In short, nah. I mean, if I've got friends coming over, or if I'm testing a recipe, I'll put some effort in and I'll make it look fancy. But 9 times out of 10, it's straight out of the pot, slap onto the plate, and I'm usually too hungry to care about how it looks.
The second last question. Your family, are you? You've had a family question. Anyone at the back there? Yeah, hold on, let me go up there. Let me head up here.
Just while you're heading up there, I've got some shallots here. I'm going to add some barbecued or charred roasted shallots. A lot of people would say, Brent, you've got some onions roasting in the oven, why don't you just use those? They're being roasted for a few hours. By the time we get them out and push through so all the liquid comes out, that'll be mush. That'll be like an onion puree. We want something fresh, we want texture, and we want to char grill the outside so that it adds to that rich umami flavour, that smoky flavour that you get from a barbecue, and it's a different way to roast an onion. So very easy, leave the skin on, cut it down the centre, and I'm just going to add some of this Spa olive oil, which is delicious, into this pan. And I'm actually going to salt the pan. I'm not going to salt the face of the onion. I'm going to salt the oil in the pan. Does anybody know why? That could be another question. We've got one up the back.
Okay, no, we've got a couple.
Couple?
One which I'm going to answer for you because it's quick. Brent really had no favourite judge. They were all great people.
A favourite judge?
Yeah.
I'll get to that one in a minute.
Yeah. Yeah, and then another question, which I think is quite an interesting one, from a lady back there, is how much practicing behind the scenes did you do back at the house?
Well, it was a
that we
piece
don't
of
see?
string.
Is it really?
Loads.
Yeah.
I mean, I did have a balance. Not everybody did. A lot of people worked a lot longer and harder than I did. But I just thought, if you're focusing on this 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you're going to go crazy. You need to have a balance, and that's with everything in life, whether it be sport, work, study, anything. You need to have a balance. So as much as I worked hard and I worked my ass off, I also had a bit of leisure too. It would be, hours and hours a week. There'd be people getting up in the middle of the night to create dishes so that nobody else saw them. There were people spending the whole time their faces in a book or their hands in the kitchen. I had a bit of both.
That's a great life lesson. And you've got a
Yeah.
whole lot of mother-in-laws here going, Christ, why couldn't my daughter have met a bloke like him before? Right, I'm going to take 2 more questions. Ma'am? You were going to answer his question. No, this is question.
Oh, the onions. The onions
This is
question.
why are we salting? What do you think? To increase the temperature? Nah. But nice try, though. Yes? Yes. Yes? Okay. She says after MasterChef, you went to India,
Yeah.
didn't find a young lady there. Would you like to take her back to Australia with you?
Sure. I've got about 10 extra suitcases, so as many as you want, just jump in. It's fine. Take everyone home.
How was your experience in India was the real question.
It was, I'm trying to just remember it now. That was really great. I can't even remember it. No. It was really cool. I mean, I got to experience some amazing things. I ate at some incredible places, and I did what I love to do, and that's not go to the fancy restaurants. It's to go around the corner to the dingy little bar and try their local street food and eat how the locals eat and live how the locals live. That's, for me, that's the best knowledge you can possibly get in the world, especially with travel and food. You need to experience
Any
it
questions?
in the locals' eyes to fully understand it. It's one thing to read something in a book and eat it in a fancy restaurant, but it's another thing to actually live it and taste it how people do. And that was what India was all about, and it was insane. I loved it. And that's what Cape Town was a little bit about too, which was cool.
And then an answer to your onions to retain the heat.
The onions, back to the onions, to retain the heat. Not so much to retain the heat. The reason I salted the oil and not the onion, because onion's made up of layers, and every onion's different depending on how fresh it is. And if you, with a dish that's complex in flavour, where you don't want to have one flavour overpowering, you need to think about it, and you don't want to risk it. So I don't want to salt the face of this because you risk the onion getting salt in the cracks because it's made up of layers, and you don't want salt to be stuck in there, and then you have a mouthful of it, and it's like, holy shit, I've got salt. I'm going to have a heart attack. So it's all about balance. I only want to season the outside, so that's why I'm seasoning the oil. And then you want to go face down into the pan, and you want to get some nice dark colour on the outside. You want it dark. See, like that, nice and charred on the outside. That's exactly what I want. And then you want to put that, I'll take that one off. I'll take this. Now that it's got the colour, that's the colour part. Step 2, into the oven for about 12 minutes, depending on the size. That will just cook it through and make it nice and soft, nice and tender. It's a sweet onion, and then you've got that beautiful charred flavour on it also, and then that's done. So that's the onion part done. And then we've got one more element. My little special twist, my little MasterChef-y twist on everything. I've got a little powder that we put on at the end just to make it look a bit fancy. The powder consists of 3 ingredients. Got a little bit of salt for flavour. We've got some toasted fennel seeds, which is that beautiful anise flavour that goes really well with pork and apples. And then we've got popcorn. Do you remember that powder I did? The popcorn, fennel and salt. We did have popcorn. Sorry, guys. No, just leave it. I'll clean it up at the end. That's okay. So the idea of this, people say, how did you come up with that combination of popcorn and pork and stuff? When I create a recipe and start to get creative with flavors, I go internationally. I think about Southeast Asian flavors. So does lime go with chili, and how can I make that in a French technique, or how can I use that in a modern Australian dish? And this was going back to America, where they have grits, made up with cornmeal, and they have that with pork a lot. So if you take the idea of using a cornmeal, what is cornmeal? What's another way I can use the flavor of corn in this dish without using corn? And that's how I came up with popcorn. So that's how I broke that down. And you can do that with almost anything and any flavour, and that's when you get creative. So we want to pop our popcorn. Depending on how much you're making, there's 2 ways you can do it. My way to keep my girlfriend happy at home is to do option A, which is to pop the popcorn into a little bit of oil. And then we keep the popped popcorn for our beautiful dessert when we watch the movie, and I'll make a caramel and we'll dip the popcorn in the caramel. And then the little kernels that don't pop, that usually get discarded or thrown away, that's what we're going to use as our powder. So essentially you've got no waste. You want to toast them off so that it gets toasty. You lose that floury taste of a raw kernel. And you've got no waste. It's cool, and I like the idea, and I like the world movement of sustainability and looking after everything, paddock to plate, don't waste. And this is something minor, but it's still that principle. So we want to go popcorn in, lid on. That'll start popping in a second, and as soon as that's done, we can grind up our powder, and we can start plating up. We've got mortar and pestle. While that's popping, this is probably your last chance before we finish to fire away with some nitty-gritty questions. We've got one up the back. One up. Have you got the mic?
Yeah, no, we'll get up there. I'm a little bit worried
Is that on?
I heard when you said, my girlfriend back home, I heard 2 hearts break.
Oh,
In
no.
the second
But
row.
you didn't miss the end part. She's back home. I'm here. Haven't you heard of the different postcode rule? Back in
Yes.
Australia, if you're in a different country, it doesn't matter.
Sorry.
No, I'm joking. Heartbroken, number 2. That's it.
So, why did you get rid of your top knot?
Why did I get rid of my top knot? Funnily enough, I never actually liked having a top knot. So the story behind the infamous top knot goes a little something like this. Well, exactly like this. I was cooking away, episode 3 before filming started, and I was doing my thing, no one around, pretty casual, dip my hair down, untied, straight into my food. Then I do like the Baywatch straight out of the water flick over the back, food, and then I put my hand straight through my hair like that, nice and slimy and greasy. And then the judges approached, watched the whole thing, and I pick up the food and offer it to them. So essentially they've got food from my hair, they've got my fingers through my hair, they've got my dirty fingers, and I'm offering them some food to taste. Gary was, how do I say this politely, less than impressed. And he said to me, Brent, I don't really know you yet, but if you do that again, if you don't tie your hair up, you may as well walk out the door now, because otherwise we'll boot you out. It was pretty much went something like that. And that's the story of the top knot. And from that moment on, I tied my hair up every single day, first thing in the morning, so that nobody could say anything. And as soon as I got out, I got the snip on the head.
And thus, the end of the top knot. Do you have a question? Go on, what's your question?
Brent's favorite South African food.
What's his favourite South African food? Well,
Favourite?
I can tell you, his favourite South African drink is
Shishanyama. Is that how you say it?
Shisanyama.
That's, yeah, it's delicious. I mean, from Australia, we have braai barbecue, and it's probably our most common thing in summer. The summer is the best time of the year for me. It reminds me of barbecue, and barbecue is what I love. So it's very similar to that, the meat, barbecued meat. I love Korean food, and I get a bit of Korean influence with the thinly sliced meat and all the spices that go with it. And then I guess it's the South African spices, which is delicious. So it's a combination that's that's delicious that I'll be taking home with me, and I'll probably steal it and say that I created it. But yeah, shisa nyama is the best. So these little unpopped kernels, you can see they're nice and toasted. You've got some colour on one side, which is great. You want to add those in. If you've got a food processor or a spice grinder or whatever, it's easier to do that. Add some fennel seed. You want fennel to be the dominating flavour, but then you get the undertow of the popcorn at the end, so that when people try it, again, they say, oh, what is that? I know what that flavour is. I've got it on the tip of my tongue. Bang, that's popcorn. How weird is that? I've got popcorn with my main course. So you want to grind that up into a powder. Might take you some time, some elbow grease, and then you end up with this, or you can pass it through a fine sieve, and then you get this powder, which is delicious. Ready for construction. So we know what we're up to. We've got our pickled apple. We've got our apple cider vinegar gel. We've got our popcorn, fennel and salt powder. We have parsnip puree, celeriac puree in the book. We've got some nasturtium flowers, which are nice and peppery. Adds a great taste to the dish. It's not just there to look pretty. We've got our jus. That's the residual liquid from the pan that we've reduced right down, which is nice and hot. We've got our pork, and then we've got our onions. So when you're thinking about flavour combinations, you know, you've got your creaminess from your puree. You've got acid, which is very important to cut through it and clears your palate after every mouthful, and it makes it easier to eat and digest. You've got that umami flavour, that beautiful umami flavour that they think is a sixth in the flavour list from the sauce. You've got your rich pork belly, you've got your salty skin, and then we've got our popcorn powder.
Looking good. See, we got the red light.
I'm ready to plate up now.
Yeah, I know. But while we're doing that and while we're plating up, I've got a couple of questions which you can kind of answer in a paragraph. So we'll start off with what did you really think of Aish? Then it went on to the mad rush at the end, and I think it's quite an interesting one for you to answer, because a lot of people kind of wonder, the mad rush, the final 5 minutes, the final minute.
3, 2, 1, tools down.
How real is all that?
Tools down. No, you know what? It is. It's 100% legit. We have a camera like this, well, a bigger camera, and a producer with every single bench. So whether it was 24 of us or whether it was 3 of us, there was a setup where everything you did was filmed, and then they would just cut it at the end. So there's the main producer behind the eyes of that. So anytime you had the shits, you were like, to the camera, because you knew that they were watching. If you miss the time frame, you've got the camera on your plate. There's nowhere to hide. So if I even put one extra bit of apple on, bang, producer would say, take it off. And if you continued to do it, you'd be in strife and probably kicked out the door. So there's no getting away with anything on the show. So the 3, 2, 1's real. But why it happens so often is probably the important part. Think about a cheese on toast. What's it take? 5 minutes to cook? Maybe. You've got 5 minutes at home to cook it, but realistically, when you're in a kitchen that you don't cook in often, you've got a pantry that you're sprinting to, running around other people. You've got plates that you need to go find. Really, an hour cook is 45 minutes. You've got 45 minutes of cooking, and then you've got that 15 minutes to stuff around, to get your ingredients, to get your plate, to get yourself sorted out and cleaned up. So when you're in the beginning and you're allowing 1 hour to cook, you would get to the 50-minute mark and you're only halfway through it. So that's why the 3, 2, 1 is so important, and it happens all the time, because you run out of time. And you would notice it happens less and less often as the show goes on, because you learn how to do it. You learn to only allow 45 minutes for the cook to go.
And then the answer to Ash.
What was the second question?
What did you really think of Ash?
Who's Ash?
Was it Ash?
The ash? What do I think about ash? As in when people make an ash powder or whatever, I think 9 times out of 10 it's so it looks good. I don't really, there's a purpose to it based on the ingredient. So we're talking about when people blacken ingredients in the oven and then they crush it into a powder and it becomes an ash. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. So it's beneficial if you use a leek or an onion or something that's actually got flavour to it when it's caramelised, like this. That's blackened on the outside, but it serves a purpose. It's got flavour to it. If you do it with like, I don't know, an apple ash, it would just taste like ash. It would have no flavour to it whatsoever. So depending on the ingredient, it adds that beautiful smoky flavour, and it's a lot more subtle when it's in an ash, because when you break it down into a fine powder, obviously the volume increases, so you use less of it. So if I was to put a whole blackened piece of kale on the plate, it would destroy the dish. But if you crush it up into a powder, you might only use a 20th of that amount, and you still get the same effect. If you know what I mean, if that explains it. Yeah, so depending on the ingredient. Was that it? Did we have a judge's question?
Yeah, we had a quick question. It wasn't really a judge's question or anything.
Okay.
It was who does most of the cooking at home? You're the girlfriend.
Oh,
and have you tried a bunny chow?
I've tried bunny chow. It's nice. I've had it a few times actually. The famous bunny chow. I haven't had the street food version though. I've had it in restaurants in the hotel. So I don't know if that counts, does it? No, I need the proper bunny chow. I need some recommendations after this. Someone give me the best bunny chow in Durban. We got mystery boxes. Yeah, okay. Mystery boxes are difficult in the beginning. So when I'm first exposed to a group of ingredients, whatever it may be, the first thing you think of in the beginning is, what the hell is this? I've got a pear, a turnip, an octopus, and half a carrot. How am I supposed to create something? When you start to learn about the show and how it works and what flavours go together, you look at food in a different way. So you might get an apple. A lot of people just think sweet, dessert. There's 100 things I could do with this apple to make it go with almost anything. If I want it to go with something, rich, I'll give some acid to it. If I want it to be super sweet, I'll roast it so it intensifies the flavour. So when you get a mystery box, you look at the ingredients and you think, how can I enhance all those flavours and make them work together? That's the number one thing, is to make the flavours combine and make sure that it's a whole dish that works together, as opposed to just chucking everything together on the plate with no purpose to it, if that makes sense. All right, so I've got a plate up because I've been given the speed up. Plating, okay. See the shape of this rectangle? Most commonly with purees, people will do a big glug of it, smear it straight down the middle in a line. That won't work with this shape, so I want to make something a little bit more round. So I'll go with a couple of tablespoons of this. And it's important to add enough of each element so that, again, you finish your plate and you've only just finished everything at the same time. You don't finish your pork and you've got 4 kilos of puree still left. So you want to make it nice and even. Smear that around. Add my pork crossways. Give it a little twist just so that it pumps up the puree a little bit and it just holds it in there so that when you move it, it doesn't just fall over. We've got our little apple cider jellies, which I'll chuck in around, and we know that they won't melt because they have what in them? Yeah. See, there's this nice little lesson there.
Yeah, they're listening. It's impressive.
I know, there's the first group that's actually listened to something. No, a joke. And then we've got our little pickled apple. If you want, you could add fresh apple to this as well. I mean, it's another texture. It's a bit of freshness. Add that.
Now, how many of you would like to taste what he's prepping there? Good. How many of you got your hands up now? Keep your hands up.
Just quickly, while you've got your hands up and your arm gets sore. The reason I left the skin on, because when you roast something, I might stretch this out to get the shoulders really aching. No, if you're quick. The reason I've got the skin on so that when it roasts, you can just push it straight off and you actually use the whole onion. You don't peel it and then roast it, because then you have to peel the top layer off again. It's a waste of good onion. So I'm going to pop out that, and thinking of the presentation, I don't want to put gravy everywhere, so I'm going to use this little onion as a gravy boat also. Back to the questions.
Right. Of the hands that are up, how many of you want to buy one of his books? And of the hands that are up to do the tastings, how many of you with your hands up that want to do a tasting want to buy a book and get it signed as well? All of you. Okay, those of you that have a book, you can put your hands down. Okay, so those that had their hands up to do a tasting and want to buy a book and get it signed, put your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you. Okay, how many people have books already that were signed? 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Some of the same family, so you can share it. Because what we've got is 16 tastings of this dish at the book stand. So those of you that are going to buy books or have books and want Brenty to sign them, he will be at the book stand, obviously after the demonstration. And if you buy a book, you can have a tasting, or if you have a book, you can have a tasting and get it signed. How's that for a lekker deal? Hey?
Yeah, what about the free book that we haven't given away yet?
Yeah, no, well, this is the freebie now.
All right,
But I think we should ask a.
All right, I'll just do one more quickly.
Okay.
I've plated that up. I've put the nasturtium on. This powder, I'm not going to sprinkle it around amongst the puree because it will become soggy and it'll just incorporate and it'll have no purpose. I want this to be a wow factor. I want people to look at it. That's the first thing that they see. So I'm going to do a nice mound of it up the top so that when you present it, the first thing that I look at is that big pile of powder and think, what is that? I want to try that. And then people are tasting it and you get the interest. Continue on now.
The big question that I'm going to ask is, what is the odd ingredient, one would think, automatically in that powder that he's just put on there? Right, first hand up at the back, eagerly waving. The popcorn. You happy with that, mate?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very
Come on
difficult
down.
question.
Come on down.
All right, and then the jus. Fill up that nice little. I won't fill it up because
Congratulations.
we've got the plates out there
That's
that we're going
yours.
to add that to. And that right there is exactly what got me into the finale of MasterChef. It's the roasted pork belly, popcorn, apple, and cider vinegar. So thank you very much. Everybody can taste some outside. How many?
Massive
15.
round of applause.
15.
Yeah, great.
Take photos. Do what you want with this one because that one is not going to get eaten. And yeah, I'll be signing. Everybody can have tastings, however many there are.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for coming along. Any bunny chow recommendations, feel free to hit me up. I'll be over watching the rugby for the next few hours, so if you want to come over, have a beer, I'll be over there.
All right, I'll join you for a beer. I'll join you for anything. And the two broken hearts can join as well. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Let's hear it once again for
Thank
Brenty.
you.
Let's hear it for our sponsors, Durban Tourism, Robertson Spices, Defy, and of course Spa for all our magnificent ingredients. Thank you. Any questions, any whatever? Thank you. I was going to photobomb that one.